The task is not so much to see what no one has seen, but to think what no one has thought about what everyone sees. Arthur Schopenhauer.
Why does thinking differently seem to push you away from everyone? The world doesn't hate fools, it hates those who can truly see. Because ignorance feels comfortable. But clarity disturbs, threatens, exposes. Maybe you know exactly what I'm talking about. Thinking too much is like carrying dynamite in your chest. One small move, one loose truth, and you blow up someone's illusion. You don't have to be aggressive. Just being real is enough. And nowadays, that's dangerous. People who see too much carry the heavy burden of awareness. Since an early age, they notice things are off. In gestures, in words, in the silence between them. They don't force depth. They simply see what no one else wants to face. And that's terrifying, because those who see too much become a threat. To see is an act of rebellion. It's like shining a flashlight in a room where everyone has learned to live in the dark. History is full of names who paid a heavy price for that. People who dared to think differently and were silenced, ridiculed, cast out. Not because they were wrong, but because they were mirrors, exposing what the world didn't want to admit. And honestly, no one hates as much as those who look in the mirror and don't like what they see. Imagine the scene. You walk into a calm, pleasant room, filled with light conversations and polite smiles. Then you flip on your flashlight, and it reveals cracks, mold, stains on the ceiling, dust everyone pretended wasn't there. You won't be applauded, you'll be avoided, because the world doesn't want light. It wants comfort, and you're walking discomfort. Psychology calls this cognitive dissonance, a state of distress the brain feels when new information threatens everything it believes. The reaction is instinctive: reject, attack, discredit. But there's an even more efficient solution: isolate the thinker. Being too lucid turns you into a silent target, and the more you see, the harder it gets to explain yourself. Deep wisdom doesn't fit in sound bites. It doesn't trend on social media. It watches, questions, stays quiet, while the world screams for performance and validation. And in this theater of life, those who don't play along make people uncomfortable. Have you noticed? Those who don't laugh at forced jokes. Those who don't post feelings they don't actually feel. Those who refuse to play the appearance game. They're seen as cold, distant, weird, but really they're just refusing to be what others expect. And in a world full of masks, sincerity becomes a crime. That's why so many thinkers, artists, and silent observers fall quiet. Not because they lack the will, but because they've learned. Explaining yourself to people who don't want to understand is a waste of vital energy. And so the smartest person in the room often ends up being the loneliest. Not by choice, but for protection. But the pain doesn't stop there. It turns into doubt. If no one understands me, maybe I'm the problem? That question is like poison. Silent, slow, paralyzing. And the answer the world usually gives you is always the same. Stay quiet, don't make it complicated, just go with the flow. But maybe, just maybe, you're not the problem. Maybe you're just a light too bright for eyes that got used to the dark. And the real question is, does it have to be this way? Are those who see too much doomed to loneliness? Or is there another path? One where thinking deeply means freedom, not exile. The world applauds intelligence, as long as it's tamed, as long as it doesn't make waves, as long as it obeys. The truth is, society wasn't built for people who think too much. It was built to function. And to function, it needs predictability, obedience. People who take what they're given without asking why. People who think too much break the system. Since childhood, you're trained to repeat formulas, not to raise your hand with the wrong question, not to stray from the script. And if you were one of those who always questioned things, you probably heard, "You overcomplicate everything. You're too sensitive. You turn everything into a problem." But what no one ever told you is, maybe you're just more lucid. In adulthood, the pressure only gets heavier. Corporate environments, institutions, religious communities, social circles, they all run on an invisible rule. Don't disturb the order. Don't dare to see what's behind the curtain. Don't say out loud what everyone is pretending not to notice. Those who see too much become inconvenient. And society has many names for the inconvenient: annoying, arrogant, difficult, radical, dissatisfied. But the truth is, for many, thinking is an act of survival. It's impossible to unsee what's been seen. And when they try to fit in, stay quiet, or pretend, They end up suffocating themselves. They live the dilemma: keep pretending to be accepted, or embrace their clarity, even if it costs them company. Let's be clear, we're not talking about arrogant people who think they're better than everyone else. We're talking about sensitive, honest, aware people who want to share their doubts, not impose their truths. And that's exactly what scares others, because imposing is easy to dismiss. But questioning is dangerous. It forces people to think, and thinking forces change. And most people don't want to change. They just want to protect their castles, even if they're built on sand. That's why truly transformative ideas get pushed aside. Not because they're crazy, but because they're subversive. They don't say, the world is this way. They ask, but what if it's not? And that question shakes foundations. The digital age only made it worse. Because now, the algorithm's logic is simple. Whoever shouts the loudest wins, not whoever thinks the deepest. Depth has lost space to noise. What goes viral isn't truth. It's reaction, it's shock, it's outrage. And in this battlefield, those who speak with nuance vanish. Those who reflect are drowned out by the noise, have you noticed? Social media is packed with instant experts, with ready-made phrases, with packaged emotions. But where's the listening? Where's the time to actually digest an idea? We're living in a theater of hysterical voices, and on that stage, anyone who speaks calmly isn't heard. Still, these voices have to keep speaking, because the world needs them. Maybe not in the trending topics, but in those silent moments when a soul quietly questions its own existence. In the instant when two people recognize each other through the shared pain of not fitting in. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you recognizes this truth. Maybe you too have felt out of place, misunderstood, rejected for thinking too much. So before we go on, I ask you, subscribe to the channel, but not for numbers, not for the algorithm. Subscribe because here, we're building an invisible network, made of people who feel deeply, think too much, and refuse empty answers. And tell me in the comments, when was the moment you felt your depth wasn't welcomed? What did you do about it? How did you deal with it? Your story might resonate with other voices still afraid to speak up. Let's create a space where deep thinking isn't seen as a threat, but as what it really is, a form of freedom. The pain of thinking too much doesn't just come from the world. It comes from the emptiness it creates. It's the weight of seeing too much and not being able to share it. It's not just the pain of not being understood. It's the torment of seeing the world with clarity while everyone else clings to illusions. And you learn you can't force anyone to see what you see. So you go quiet. You pull away. You adapt. But there's a huge difference between being alone and being lost. Solitude isn't failure. Sometimes it's the bravest way to stay true to yourself. Some people weren't born to go with the flow. They are the edges that confront the river, the silence that disarms, the question that shakes the system. And even though the world tries to convince them it's a flaw, it's actually a rare strength. Great thinkers, mystics, philosophers, and creators found peace not in the crowd, but in the wholeness of being with themselves. Not because they rejected the world, but because they understood the world rejects what it can't yet name. They weren't cold. They were radically sincere. And sincerity, when it's deep, feels like violence to those who live in denial. But that doesn't mean you need to shut down. It just means not every audience deserves a front row seat to your soul. Not every gaze is worthy of what you see. Not every conversation can hold your depth. Sometimes the best way to exist is to choose carefully where you shine. And that's not cowardice. It's wisdom. If you feel like your clarity scares people, don't hide it. Refine it. Use it with precision. With compassion. Learn to adjust your flashlight. Not everything needs to be exposed. But when you do shine it, let it be true light. And more importantly, find your people. We don't need crowds. We need resonance. We need someone who listens without trying to fix us. A look that says, I see it too. Silences that comfort, not ones that make us feel small. And this space right here exists for that. To bring together those who walk inward. To create a place where depth isn't a problem, it's a value. Schopenhauer once said, the more intelligent a man is, the more he tends towards solitude. But maybe what he really meant is, the more honest you are with yourself, the harder it becomes to find someone who can walk beside you. And even so, that is freedom. The freedom to not belong to anything that denies your essence. So if at any point during this video you saw yourself in the words, in the silences, or in the wounds, welcome. Here, being different isn't a flaw, it's a necessity. And if you haven't yet subscribed, now's the time. But not for the stats. Subscribe because here, we don't want crowds. We want truth. Voices that think, that feel, that question, and that refuse to shrink themselves just to fit where they don't belong. And I ask you, share your story in the comments. Have you ever tried to silence yourself to be accepted? Have you ever been rejected for seeing too much? What did you learn from it? Let's create a community that welcomes what the world avoids. A network built not on appearances, but on awareness. Because deep thinking isn't a flaw. It's the beginning of your freedom.